The 911 call came in at 3:17 a.m. on October 13, 2023. The operator would later describe it as one of the most disturbing calls of her 15-year career. "Please, you need to help us. Something's in the woods. I don't know where my friends are." Cabin 217, Lakeside Drive. When authorities arrived at Lakeside Cabin 217 42 minutes later, they discovered a scene that defied conventional explanation. Blood trails leading in impossible directions. Personal belongings scattered across an acre of forest. And 3 survivors with stories that contradicted not only each other but the physical evidence collected at the scene. 5 friends had arrived at this remote Adirondack location less than 48 hours earlier. They came with coolers full of food, hiking equipment, board games, and plans for a weekend of reconnection. They had no reason to suspect that something waited for them in the darkness surrounding Cabin 217. No way to know that by Sunday night, 2 of them would vanish without explanation. And none of them could have imagined that what happened in those woods would defy rational explanation and haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. This is the story of what happened at Lakeside Cabin 217. The evidence is incomplete, the witnesses are unreliable, and the truth may never fully come to light. The 5 friends at the center of this story shared a history dating back to their university days. For privacy reasons, we'll refer to them by pseudonyms. Emma, the organized tech professional who arranged the trip. Mark, her boyfriend and an amateur photographer. Danielle, Emma's former roommate now pursuing advanced studies. Jake, an experienced outdoorsman who had known Mark since childhood. And Lisa, a newcomer to the friend group, invited along as Danielle's cousin. By all accounts, the group was in high spirits as they departed from Boston on Friday morning, October 11th. Emma had recently received a promotion at her tech company. The weekend getaway was meant to be a celebration, a chance to unwind before winter set in. The drive took just over 5 hours, with one notable stop at a general store 30 miles from their destination. This would be the last time all 5 were seen together by anyone outside their group. Security footage from the general store shows the group purchasing additional supplies, flashlights, batteries, and extra food. The store's owner, Harold Miller, remembers them clearly, particularly their interaction with a local man who overheard their destination. According to Miller's statement to investigators, the local man, whose identity has never been confirmed, approached the group as they were paying. What he said was brief but unsettling. "Cabin 217. You folks might want to stay inside after dark up there." When questioned further, the man allegedly shrugged and walked out. The group apparently treated this as local color rather than a genuine warning. The Lakeside Cabin's property consists of 20 rustic accommodations spread across 80 acres of Adirondack forest. In October 2023, only 3 cabins were occupied, the nearest being over 2 miles from Cabin 217. The property's isolation is part of its appeal. No reliable cell service, limited electricity, and the closest neighbor a full 4 miles away. Cabin 217 itself was built in the 1970s and renovated in 2018. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a great room with a stone fireplace, and a screened porch overlooking the lake. Nothing in its history suggested anything unusual, at least, nothing in its official history. However, deep in online forums dedicated to Adirondack history and folklore, references to unusual events at or near Cabin 217 occasionally surface. 3 separate accounts from different decades mention unusual sounds in the surrounding forest. A post from 2011 details a family cutting their stay short after their children refused to sleep due to someone walking on the roof all night. These stories share common elements but lack verification. According to Emma's journal, recovered after the incident, their arrival at approximately 3:30 p.m. on Friday was uneventful. They spent the afternoon settling in, exploring the immediate surroundings, and preparing dinner. Mark set up his camera equipment, intending to capture night sky photographs over the lake. That first evening passed without incident. The group played board games, consumed moderate amounts of alcohol, and turned in around midnight. All witness accounts agree on these details. It was the last normal night any of them would experience. Saturday morning, Jake discovered something unusual during a solo walk before breakfast. Approximately 200 yards from the cabin, he found a series of trees marked with symbols carved into the bark. When investigators later examined these markings, forestry experts confirmed they weren't typical trailblazes or wildlife management markings. Their purpose and origin remain unexplained. Jake photographed several of these markings before returning to the cabin. He showed the images to his friends, but according to later statements, no one was particularly concerned. They attributed the carvings to previous guests or local hikers. The weather that Saturday was unseasonably cold, with temperatures dropping throughout the day and light snow forecast for the evening. The group planned a hike to a nearby ridge with views of the surrounding wilderness. All five set out together shortly after 10 a.m. The first reported unusual occurrence took place approximately 2 hours into their hike. Jake, who was slightly ahead of the group, stopped suddenly and called the others over. He claimed to have seen someone watching them from between the trees, a figure standing perfectly still about 50 yards off the trail. By the time the others arrived, whoever or whatever Jake had spotted was gone. Mark attempted to capture photographs of the area where Jake had seen the figure. These images, recovered from his camera after the incident, would later become a subject of intense scrutiny and debate. After returning from their hike around 2 p.m., the group's dynamics began to shift. According to Danielle's statement, Emma became increasingly anxious throughout the afternoon, claiming to hear noises from the cabin's small attic space. Physical investigation of the attic by Jake revealed nothing unusual, but Emma insisted the sounds continued intermittently. Shortly after 4 p.m., Mark and Jake decided to head to the lakeshore to photograph the sunset. Emma, Danielle, and Lisa opted to remain at the cabin, preparing dinner and playing cards. This decision to separate would later be scrutinized by investigators as potentially critical to understanding the night's events. As daylight began to fade, the first serious anomalies occurred. Mark and Jake had been at the lakeshore for approximately 40 minutes when they both reported feeling as though they were being observed. Later review of the photographs taken during this session revealed something extraordinary. Frame 37 of Mark's memory card shows what appears to be a figure standing between two pine trees approximately 30 yards behind their position. The figure is indistinct but undeniably humanoid. No other hikers or campers were registered in the area that weekend. When enhanced by forensic image analysts, the figure appears to be unusually tall and thin. The shadows and image quality make definitive conclusions impossible. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Emma's journal describes a growing sense of unease. She wrote, "Someone tried the door handles twice. Lisa thinks it was just the wind, but I know what I heard." Danielle suggested calling the property manager, but there's no signal up here. Starting to think this weekend was a mistake. The discrepancies between accounts begin here. In her official statement, Danielle claimed Emma was acting paranoid and that no one had approached the cabin. Lisa's statement partially corroborates Emma's version, noting that she too heard unusual sounds outside but attributed them to wildlife or weather. Mark and Jake returned to the cabin shortly after 6 p.m., earlier than planned. According to Jake's statement, they had heard whooping sounds in the distance that seemed to be moving toward them. Both men reported feeling followed on their return journey, though neither saw anyone directly. The five friends prepared and ate dinner together as snow began to fall outside. The cabin's electricity flickered several times throughout the evening. These power fluctuations were later confirmed by the property's monitoring system and affected only cabin 217, not the other occupied cabins on the property. During one of these power outages, Emma discovered a folder of newspaper clippings in a kitchen drawer while searching for candles. These articles, dating from 1983, described the disappearance of a couple from a cabin in the same area. Their case was never solved. When investigators later searched the cabin, no such folder was found. By 9 p.m., the group's anxiety had manifested as tension. According to Danielle, Emma and Mark argued about whether they should leave immediately despite the snowfall and darkness. Jake suggested they all stay together in the main room overnight rather than separating into bedrooms. Lisa's recorded voice memo, apparently created secretly during this discussion, captures portions of this debate. At approximately 10:30 p.m., all survivors describe an unusual and extreme temperature drop inside the cabin. The thermostat reading fell from 68 degrees to 42 degrees in less than 5 minutes, despite the fireplace remaining active. This temperature anomaly has never been adequately explained. At this point, Jake and Mark decided to check the cabin's exterior, concerned about a possible broken window or open door causing the temperature drop. Emma, Danielle, and Lisa remained inside. This was the last time all five individuals were together in one location. What happened next forms the core mystery of the Lakeside Cabin incident. According to Emma, she observed a figure standing at the tree line watching the cabin, a figure she described as wrong somehow and too tall to be a person. When she pointed this out to the others, Danielle claimed to see nothing. Records indicate that at 11:17 p.m., the cabin's rear kitchen window shattered. The glass was found broken inward, suggesting force applied from outside. At roughly the same time, Lisa's voice memo recorded a series of sounds that audio experts have been unable to definitively identify, described variously as animal-like, mechanical, or similar to distorted human vocalizations played backward. In the chaos that followed, the group separated. Lisa ran to the master bedroom, locking herself inside. Emma barricaded herself in the bathroom. Danielle's whereabouts during the next 20 minutes remain unaccounted for in any witness statement. Outside, Jake and Mark had become separated from each other in the increasingly heavy snowfall. At 11:43 p.m., Mark's phone, despite the poor reception, successfully sent a text message to Jake's device. It contained only, "Where are you? Answer me." Jake claims never to have received this message. It would be the last confirmed communication from Mark. The critical events occurred between midnight and 3:17 a.m., when the 911 call was finally placed. The timeline during these hours is fragmented and contradictory. Lisa's statement indicates she remained locked in the bedroom until approximately 12:30 a.m., when she heard what she described as dragging sounds on the cabin's roof, followed by something heavy falling past the window. At this point, she attempted to call for help using her cell phone but could not get a signal. Danielle's account picks up at roughly 1 a.m., when she claims to have regained consciousness in the woods approximately 100 yards from the cabin with no memory of how she got there. She reported seeing flashlight beams moving through the trees some distance away and called out, believing them to be her friends. The lights immediately extinguished. She then made her way back to the cabin. Jake's statement describes becoming disoriented in the woods after hearing what he initially believed was Mark calling for help. He followed the voice deeper into the forest before realizing something was wrong. The voice had begun repeating the same phrase in exactly the same intonation, an impossibility for natural human speech. At this point, Jake attempted to return to the cabin but became temporarily lost. Emma remained barricaded in the bathroom throughout this period. Her statement describes hearing multiple individuals moving through the cabin, far more than could be accounted for by her friends. She reported hearing conversations in a language I couldn't recognize and furniture being moved repeatedly. At approximately 2:15 a.m., all three survivors independently report hearing a scream from the direction of the lake. Jake, still in the woods, described it as starting as Mark's voice but changing into something else. Emma and Danielle, who had reconnected inside the cabin, both identified the scream as Lisa's. Lisa's precise movements remain unknown. When authorities arrived, they discovered a single set of footprints leading from the cabin to the lake's edge, where they simply stopped. These were confirmed to match Lisa's boot size and pattern. Despite extensive searches including underwater operations, Lisa has never been found. Mark's camera was discovered approximately 300 yards from the cabin in the opposite direction from the lake. The device was severely damaged, but forensic technicians were able to recover the final images from its memory card. The last photograph, taken at 1:47 a.m. according to the timestamp, shows an indistinct figure standing in the snow. Image analysis suggests the figure is approximately 7 feet tall with disproportionately long limbs. Experts remain divided on whether this represents a genuine anomaly or camera damage creating a distorted image. By 3 a.m., Jake had found his way back to the cabin, reuniting with Emma and Danielle. It was Emma who placed the 911 call at 3:17 a.m. using the cabin's landline after multiple failed attempts with cell phones. When authorities arrived at 3:59 a.m., they found the three survivors in a state of extreme distress. The temperature inside the cabin was recorded at 38 degrees despite an active fire in the fireplace. The investigation that followed produced more questions than answers. Search teams with cadaver dogs covered an 8-mile radius over the next 72 hours. Despite ideal tracking conditions in the fresh snow, neither Mark nor Lisa was located. Mark's distinctive boot prints led directly into a rocky area where they abruptly vanished. Lisa's tracks, as mentioned, ended at the water's edge. Physical evidence at the scene defied conventional explanation. Blood samples found on the kitchen floor matched Mark's DNA profile, yet formed patterns that forensic analysts described as directionally impossible, appearing to flow upward against gravity in certain sections. The symbols Jake had photographed on trees now appeared on additional trees that had been unmarked the previous day, some carved into frozen bark that would have been impossible to alter without significant tools and time. The three survivors were transported to Albany Medical Center for evaluation. All exhibited unusual symptoms, extremely low core body temperatures that resisted warming, temporary corneal damage consistent with snow blindness despite being indoors, and elevated levels of stress hormones exceeding what doctors typically observe even in severe trauma patients. Psychological evaluations raised further concerns. Emma experienced selective mutism for the first 48 hours after the incident. When she finally spoke, her descriptions of events included detailed accounts of phenomena that defy rational explanation. Psychiatric professionals found no evidence of pre-existing mental health conditions that could account for her experiences. Danielle's statements contained numerous inconsistencies when compared with physical evidence. A voluntary polygraph examination proved inconclusive, with the examiner noting that her physiological responses were highly unusual even when answering control questions with known truthful answers. Jake's testimony remained the most consistent with the physical evidence, yet contained one extraordinary claim that investigators were unable to verify or disprove. He maintained that during his time in the woods, he experienced a 17-minute period where the snowfall stopped in midair, completely frozen in place, while he could still move freely. No meteorological phenomenon could explain such an occurrence. All electronic devices belonging to the group experienced catastrophic failures. Apart from Mark's partially recovered camera memory and Lisa's voice recording, no digital evidence survived. Device failure analysis indicated exposure to strong electromagnetic fields not consistent with any known natural source in the area. After 2 weeks, the search for Mark and Lisa was officially scaled back. Neither family has accepted the lack of resolution. Private investigators hired by Mark's parents continued searching for months afterward, finding no additional evidence. The case remains officially classified as open/missing persons rather than homicide, despite the blood evidence. The historical connections to the 1983 disappearance mentioned in the newspaper clippings Emma reportedly found have been investigated extensively. That case involved a couple, Richard and Susan Keller, who vanished from a cabin less than a mile from the location of Cabin 217. Their vehicle remained in the driveway, their belongings undisturbed inside the cabin. They were never found. Experts from various fields have offered theories about what happened at Lakeside Cabin 217. Criminal psychologists have suggested the possibility of an unknown assailant, though the lack of clear motive and the unusual evidence patterns make this hypothesis problematic. The absence of any similar incidents in the region both before and after October 2023 further complicates this theory. Environmental explanations have been proposed, including exposure to naturally occurring hallucinogenic compounds in local fungal species, or unusual geological formations creating infrasound frequencies known to induce anxiety and perceptual distortions. Extensive testing of soil, water, and air samples from the area revealed nothing unusual. Inevitably, paranormal theories have emerged. Proponents point to the impossible physical evidence, the unexplained electromagnetic anomalies, and the consistent subjective experiences of 3 otherwise reliable witnesses. While scientific consensus rejects such explanations, the case remains one of the most thoroughly documented instances where conventional explanations appear insufficient. Today, 18 months after the events at Lakeside Cabin 217, the survivors continue to struggle with the aftermath. Emma has relocated to another state and rarely speaks publicly about the incident. Danielle has become involved with a research group studying unexplained phenomena. Jake has written a memoir about the experience that remains unpublished due to ongoing legal considerations. Mark and Lisa remain officially classified as missing persons. Their families continue to seek answers through private investigations and regular appeals to authorities. Lakeside Cabin 217 has been permanently closed to rentals, though the property owners have refused requests to demolish the structure. What truly happened on that October night in the Adirondack forest? Was it a criminal act concealed by elaborate misdirection? An environmental factor causing shared delusions? Or something beyond our current understanding of reality? The evidence presents contradictions that have not been resolved. The witnesses offer testimony that cannot be fully reconciled with known science. And the woods surrounding Lakeside Cabin 217 keep their secrets. 5 friends arrived at Cabin 217 looking for a weekend of connection and celebration. Instead, They encountered something that defies explanation. 2 never returned. 3 have never been the same. And the truth about what waits in those woods remains unknown. Some mysteries remain hidden, but not forever. Subscribe for more stories that will leave you questioning everything. Just hit the subscribe button.